And welcome to Little Black Book. You know what time it is. You already know what time it is. Oh yeah, the notes are on fire today. We've got a video today called Before You Have Sex. Yes, so if you're new to the channel, make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for the notification of the uploads. And for those of you who are returnees, you ain't got the minerals, you ain't got the minerals, yeah, minerals. So yeah, let's get into the video. So we're talking about to you guys before you have sex. Now, I did a video about 5 years ago when I first started YouTube. My first ever video was called Sex Before Marriage. And I'm revisiting this topic again because I wanted to kind of just expand on it on a different level and come from a different angle. And so the video is called Before You Have Sex. Now, I've been really trying to study sex for the past year and a bit, just trying to understand it, especially from a Christian point of view, as to why, especially why God actually links sex and worship together. So, and oftentimes we see in the Bible, it says Israel has been adulterous, they're fornicating, and all they've done is actually worship another god. But he equates that to being very sexual. And that makes us understand that sex is more than just the physicality of two people, intertwining. So what I wanted to do is kind of like go deeper into it and actually understand it on another level. And what I found myself being at was dealing with sex on a chemical level. And so what I found was that there were often three, hormones that are normally released in the pleasure section of having sex. And that was the dopamine, the serotonin, and the oxytocin. Now, obviously, I am not a perfect doctor, whatever. I'm sure there are more other things that come with it, but I'm dealing with these three because I want to be able to explain something to you before you have sex, right? And I'm not talking about married people because they're meant to have sex. I'm talking about us simpletons who are single. Okay, guys, I'm not single anymore. But for those who are obviously single, or courting or dating or whatever, whether you're Christian or not, I want you to consider, is there a deepness that I need to really consider before I have sex? And so yeah, the three things, like I said, the hormones were dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Now the oxytocin, I believe, if I'm correct again, is to deal with the bonding hormone. It's what allows us to bond with one another, right? And that's that kind of during the sex of that clinginess that you feel, that closeness that you feel, that intensity of feeling like you're one at that moment, yeah, the oxytocin, right? Then there's serotonin, which makes us our well-being, that makes us feel safe, secure, that's excrete often sometimes. Well, it's excrete also that as a way to, not as a way, but helps relax the muscles as well. So after you've aroused, that also helps as well. But there's another chemical that comes with that as well. So again, there are different chemicals that come, but I'm just dealing with these three. And then there's obviously dopamine, which we all know. You eat chocolate, you get dopamine, the feel-good factor. Yeah, that's what makes the sex feel, you know what I mean? That climax feeling, the dopamine's rushing, you know what I'm saying? So on a chemical level, we can see that sex does something. Yeah, on a chemical level, the chemicals are running through your mind and through your body. Something is changing. Something's being excreted as you have sex. So there is no such thing as sex is just sex, because there is an interchange, all right? There is something that you're getting out of it. And so what I wanted to do was kind of find out, what are we getting out of it? And what I started realizing that a lot of people, we have to ask this main question. Are you having sex for the wrong reasons? I want to just go somewhere with it. Let's just go there. And so I want to work with this motto. The motto is, think before you do, don't do before you think. All right? Think before you do, don't do before you think. All right? In the case of sex, you want to be thinking before you do. Because a lot of people have a reason as to why they want sex and actually do not get out what they actually wanted from the sex. And I ain't talking about the climax. I'm talking about the extra factors that go around it as to why you decided to give your body over to somebody else. Because sex is a participating sport, if you want to call it that, where it requires you to be vulnerable. Yeah, on an emotional level, on a physical level, on a spiritual level, So these things are not easy. At the experiential level, sex ties in a lot of these intimacies that come with that. And there are different reasons as to why we engage in this thing. Now, one of the main reasons, obviously, yes, some people say it's for pleasure. But if you're having many sexual partners, is it just pleasure? Some of us are having sex because we've got a partner who we love, and we're having sex with them because we want to show them there's this love, right? I'm going to go into all the different reasons. We'll come to that in a second. And so I want to just come to say this as well. Cannabis, in its natural state, plant-based, becomes a medical aid for people that have certain ailments, illnesses, and sicknesses, right? But used incorrectly, it becomes a drug that gets people high, gets them paranoid, gets them, having the munchies and different things that can come alongside that. So when there's an abuse of something, it can be when it's used incorrectly, it can cause some trauma, it can cause damage, and it can be permanent. Because obviously there are other drugs that can be mixed in with weed, THC, and whatever goes with it as well. So, using something incorrectly in its impure format and using it out of its time and its season and its proper use can cause drama. And what am I saying? I'm saying that sex in itself is never the issue. Sex isn't the issue. Sex is not the issue. I want you to let you know that, because a lot of Christians will think to themselves, sex is an issue. Sex is not an issue. Fornication is an issue because it's an indication of time. Fornication lets us know that it's done outside of time. Do you understand? It's not in its proper season. Do you feel what I'm saying? So sex on its own is never a problem. And so I want to break this down. So when I was looking at sex, I was kind of breaking out, so what is sex? So we have penetrating sex, which is what we all class sex to be, which is like when the penis enters in the vagina, that's sex. There's oral sex, there's anal sex, and then I call it miscellaneous sex, which involves bondage, which involves masturbation, which involves whatever you can think of that goes into your mind between, two humans or whatever. We have that class under miscellaneous sex. And so dealing with that as well, I started realizing that with the chemicals that are released during sex, sex becomes a drug. And this is where we have a problem. Because that drug, like I said about the cannabis, has to be used correctly. Otherwise, it can become an addiction, which is used to fix something that got you there in the first place. An emotional trauma, physical trauma that you've experienced, sexual trauma that you've experienced. Some of these things that we haven't dealt with, that we feel is affecting us, can lead us to a certain drug that will help us cover the tracks, right? And so what we see, so for instance, I spoke about masturbation. I speak about masturbation, I did a few videos about how to overcome pornography and masturbation and why you're triggered. And I said about these things, about a lot of them are from emotional triggers. When you feel emotional about something, or an overwhelming emotion where you feel like you can't deal, it normally seeps in and causes you to react in a certain way. You act out and then you choose pornography or masturbation as a way out. And so what happens is sometimes sex then becomes the exit from the real world. People use sex as a way or a mechanism to cope. So if I have sex, I get this high, I get the release of these drugs, which are the chemicals, I should say, that come from these drugs, that give me a certain feeling, that numb me for a time in a season away from what I'm dealing with. Now, I'm not saying you have deep issues. I want you to understand this. We're not talking about just deep issues where, my mother abandoned me and that's why I'm going to have sex. No. They're just little things, little things that can build up over time. Okay, let's say, parents, couldn't really buy you a present for your birthday. Then your friend obviously forgot to say happy birthday to you. And it's just those two things, but you feel now unloved. Or, do you know what I mean? So it's not like it has to be a deep trauma type, but it makes you feel a certain way, that emotion. Right? Now you're feeling a bit unloved, and now you're looking for a love, or you're looking for something to experience the illusion of love. And so because we don't know what love is, though the Bible tells us God is love, we're looking for the thing that kind of shows us what love is. And you have to understand, we go through life affected by what is inputted into us. On TV, you see love being equated with sex all the single time. All the freaking time. And so what happens is, in your mind, you're getting conditioned to think, hey, sex is love. And so what is if I'm looking for love, I'm actually going to have to get it through sex. And a lot of us go through this misconception, right? And so what happens is people then chase the sex thinking they're going to get a love out of it. Because some of the chemicals that are released are making us feel a certain high that we equate with love. I hope I'm making sense. So even dealing with, like I said, sex is a drug. I put here that when you're engaging even in sexual behavior, right? When you're engaging in sexual behavior, at that moment, if you remember, and I should put a trigger. I'm going to put a trigger clause at the top of the video. You should remember that there are you get into a certain mode of thinking, right? When you get into the pornography, masturbation, you get into that the red mist moment, right? And what happens? The rest of the world begins to fade. Yeah, all your problems begin to dissipate. Sex is a drug that allows you to exit the world, enter into a fantasy for the time being. So my question is, why are you really having sex? Is it truly because you love that person and you believe it's the right time? Or is it you're chasing potentially an illusion? So just to deep this, because sex obviously releases serotonin, right? Oxytocin, right? Because sex releases oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, right? A lot of us, especially, this is going to be a specific message for a lot of people specifically. A lot of us have missing ties and bonds within our own families. Yeah, a lot of us come from not necessarily even broken homes, but homes that are disorganized. There's a lack of attention. We didn't have the right bonding moments with our parents from very young. We've become very independent because of those moments. We're used to stand on our own 2 feet. People have to fend for themselves. They're used to fighting for themselves, everything like that. There's a lack of cohesion in a lot of our families. And because of the lack of cohesion in our families, we look for some way to feel significant and to bond with people, right? And this is the same thing with how people not everyone, some people end up in gangs because they're looking for what? The bonding. They're looking for what? The connection. They're looking for what? That the bone of my bone, the flesh of my flesh. And I don't mean just a woman. I'm talking about people who are like you. Because when Adam was talking to animals, it wasn't his type of person. When he found Eve, it was his type of person. Many of us are looking for our type of person. We're looking for a longing, a place that we belong. And this oxytocin that's released as a chemical through sex gives us this kind of feeling of being bonded to somebody. And that bonding represents somebody cares for me. I'm significant in somebody's life, right? So when that's released through sex, of course it becomes addictive because that feeling of somebody actually wanting you. This is why many of us, when we have sex, masturbate, pornography, everything like that, when we finally climax and we come to our senses, what is your thoughts? I shouldn't have done that. Why am I doing this? Especially when you have sex with somebody that you really didn't want to have sex with, but you had it because not necessarily you were burning, but there was something else that was working and you thought to yourself, all right, let me just do it. Because you were hoping for something else to retrieve out of that transaction, but what came out of it at the end of it was actually more regret, more frustration, more guilt, more annoyance, and not exactly what you wanted. And this oxytocin that's released as a chemical gives us this bonding hormone. These things come through sharing a meal, through sharing experiential times together, just doing things that help you bond, telling people that you love them, regularly and stuff like that. These things help us to bond, right? And that same drug is released through sex. So no wonder people have sex so much, right? And do it outside of time and season because we're looking for that bonding session. That bonding session, that somebody that gets you, right? Because being naked, and I'm not talking about just physically now, having sex makes you vulnerable and naked emotionally. It's an emotional sport, a spiritual sport. You're hoping that somebody sees. The Bible says that when he entered her, he knew her. We're looking for a knowing from the individual person when we have sex. And so that vulnerability that we're releasing to that person, we're giving over our body to that person, is so that that person can connect with us. And the reason why God even links worship and sex together is the way that when we worship, we get bonded to God. When we worship, we get closer to God. When we worship God, we become vulnerable to God. And now that same thing happens in the process of sex. So the question is, why are you really having sex? Are you actually looking for a bonding session rather than actually sex? Are you actually looking for somebody to be your personal person rather than actually sex? Are you looking for somebody to actually know you on a level rather than having sex? It's a question you might want to ask yourself before you have sex. The question I will ask as well is, a lot of people are probably watching this might be in relationships already and might say, you know, I love the person, I care for the person, I want to be that person, that's why I'm having sex with them. And just because obviously, you know, I'm privileged to be in this position right now, and I'm going to say this righteously, I'm privileged to be in this position. I've not had sex for the last 2 years and a bit, right? Don't get twisted, you know, there's been some close calls, yeah? Now, in regards to that, what I started realizing is that the sex that I'm thinking that I need or I want isn't necessarily what I actually desire. And so there are other forms of intimacy, into me you see, that we are needing. And so the question I'll ask the question I want to ask you, if you're in a couple specifically as well, is have you worked on other forms of intimacy? I gave 6 forms of intimacy, potentially 7. There's experiential, meaning the things that we do together. There's the mental, which is the things that we talk about, the deep things of life, what your intellectual ideas are, what your future goals may be. There's the emotional intimacy, which is like my feelings, how I feel, you know, what's going on with me on that particular level. There's a spiritual level, you know, your intimacy with God, you know, what your beliefs are, what your faith is, etc. Then there's you know, there's your physical intimacy, which is hugs, you know, maybe some kiss, maybe it's just a touch, maybe it's a person just being in your vicinity, yeah. And then there's obviously sexual intimacy, which is, you know, foreplay. It's the getting into the bullseye, you know, the madness, all that kind of stuff, right? But the question is, you're connecting on a sexual level, or you want to. Have you connected on other levels? And the last one is actually financial. Have you connected on other levels? Do you know this person the way you need to know that person? Or are you hoping to retrieve that information through sex? Because a lot of people, what happens is that we don't know how to foster intimacy with an individual person. We don't know how to communicate, and what we do is we communicate through sex, hoping to retrieve some information about how to be more closer to that person. Because it's not sex that's going to foster the intimacy that you need long run. What sex does is it creates the chemicals that for a time and a season, this is why people can get dickmatized, as we say, yeah, or, you know, whipped by the poussoir, right? And that is because the chemicals that are released during the process of sex are drawing you in, and you're excited, just like having a drug of cocaine, sniffing it up, and the high, you're addicted to the high, not the actual sex, or even the person. This is why sometimes when after the sex happens, you even want to discard the person. You feel sick. Why did I even do it with you? Ugh. But you go back there again because it's the high that you're looking for and what comes with it. Just saying, think about it before what? You have sex. And another question I want to ask you guys is, do you really want sex, or do you want to feel desired? And desired doesn't require you to have sex. Right? Esther Perel said this very well, which is that most people cheat because they want to feel desired. What's the desire? The desire is a wanting. I want to feel, right? You want to feel like something, and we associate this feel oftentimes with sex because that's what we see in the media. That's what we see in films. We see it all the time where the man really desires the woman, and he desires her, and he has to hug her, and they have to rip each other's clothes off, and this is what we get shown as what desire is. And yet you feel empty. And yet you feel unfulfilled, and yet they don't know your dreams. Yet they don't know what you like. They don't know where you're going. They don't know what your ambitions and your dreams are. So you're not really fulfilling all the other aspects of desire that you have. So what you're doing actually is you're not even really filling the tank. Do you know what I mean? You're not filling the tank with what you actually need. And so when you get along the roadside, you get to a certain point in the road, the car starts to chugga, car stops. And you wonder why relationships are breaking. It's because we are not spending time actually desiring or getting what we desire that we actually need. We chase it up or cover it up with a desire that's not necessarily what you actually wanted. You know, it's what we call a failed exchange. You know, you actually really wanted, you know, to have this person meet these particular aspects, and they said they would, or they didn't say they would even say it. And what happened? You know, it's what we call a failed exchange. You wanted this, and the person presented something that looked a bit like your thing, but actually wasn't. You accepted it, and then when you realized when you got home, it wasn't the thing. Yeah? Failed exchange. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So, yeah, I mean, the question is, what is it that you actually want? What is it that you actually want? Because I think a lot of people, you know, lack conversational skills. We lack the ability to be vulnerable, to be open, and to explore those vulnerabilities with somebody else. We lack the ability to actually connect with people on another level other than sex. Or we're really good at sex. We're good at sex. And so what we think we want is the plaudits and the ego being fulfilled. So we have sex with multiple partners, and we get the plaudits and get the accolades from, you're bad at sex, you know, you're good at sex, your dick game is good, your pissoir's good, you know, and you get excited, but you're still unfulfilled at the end of the day, because all that you are is a sexual object. But that's not who you are. You are not a sexual being. That's why there's an unfulfillment there that creeps up in the back of the mind. And even if you are in a relationship where you think you're happy, it creeps up and then it gets halfway through the relationship and you're thinking, is this all there is? Because no matter how amazing the sex is, the drug will eventually wear off. There will be a crash. There will be a crash in your relationship. If your relationship is based solely on sex, or I shouldn't even say solely on sex, if the majority of the relationship is covered up by sex, you will get to a point where the drug no longer, it gets to a point where we call it, what do you call it? It's got to its premium, basically, yeah? That you now, it's almost like when you deal with pornography, right? You get to a place where something's no longer enough. Okay, yeah, it wasn't enough to see a girl having sex with a man. I've reached my tolerance level now. I need to go past it. I need to see gang banging. All right, that wasn't enough. I need to see a horse doing a girl. Like, fam, it's like you need to keep topping it. And before long, you find yourself somewhere you shouldn't be. Maybe it's an argument. Maybe it's complaints. Maybe it's you go and cheat on your partner. Whatever you want to call it. A lot of these things are coming from the fact that we're not dealing with the other aspects of the intimacy that we need to deal with. Cool. So, and you know, I was going to say as well, a lot of people are what we call pissoir whipped, dick whipped, you know, dickmatized, you know. And the reason why I say that is because it's just like being in a drugged state, right? If you've ever spoken to somebody who's highly drugged, right, they can become incoherent. They no longer can identify fully with the world and its normalities, right? They do irregular stuff, yeah? They start behaving oddly, right? And it's the same thing when you are solely hooked on sex. You become incoherent with what's normal, right? And you see it because you say to your friend, listen, like blood, like fam, this girl's treating you so bad. Like, how come you're still there? Or this guy's treating you so bad. No, but I like him, but I love him. It's not the love, you know, it's the chemicals talking now. But yeah, I love him and, you know, he does that, this, that. But the person looking from the outside is going, this ain't normal. What you're doing is not normal. Why? Because the person is in a drugged state. Same thing that sex does. You're in a drugged state. And so now they become incoherent to normalities. They are used to abnormality because it feeds into their fantasy, which is what we're talking about. Cool. I know it's going a bit deep. So I'm just trying to get you to understand. There's more to the sex than you're actually probably realizing. You know, it's more than just the act. I'm not trying to scare you. I want to get you to a place of actually being considerate. Considerate, yeah? It means consider what you're doing at a rate. Consider what you're doing at a rate. Considerate, you know what I mean? Think before you do, don't do to think. All right, so talking about failed exchange, yeah? So the failed exchange is basically you went into something expecting something, right? And what you got back was not what you expected, right? So here's the thing about sex as well. A lot of us, and it's not everybody, a lot of us, like I said, we're looking for a different desire and want, yeah, from sex, yeah. Whether it was, and you know, my last video that I did on celibacy, and I talked about I want to hug, not sex. There were so many comments below saying, you know, this is what we want from guys, and you know what, and the guy's not wanting that, and you realize. So look at the failed exchange is showing itself in trueness. You went there, you just wanted a hug, you just wanted some physical touch. You just wanted him to hold you, you know what I'm saying? You just wanted to put his arm around you, yeah? You wanted to rest your head on his chest, yeah? That's what you wanted. You just wanted some closeness. You wanted that intimacy, yeah? You wanted some company in your home that day. You didn't even want sex. You just wanted somebody to be in the room. They didn't have to even talk, just be in a room. That's what you really wanted, yeah? You wanted somebody to go on an excursion and a trip with you. You wanted somebody to help you fix some cupboards, yeah? Whatever it was, you wanted something from that person, right? And a bonding moment, right? Oxytocinal moments. This is what I'm saying, yeah? And through that, right? You found yourself in a place where there was a failed exchange, yeah? All you wanted was a hug, and you ended up getting some D, or you ended up getting some pissoir. All you wanted was a hug, and you got that. That's called a failed exchange, and this is where a lot of us are in. Right? And then once you're in that first time, you can end up falling into a cycle of it because what? It's addictive. The high that you get from it, the release of the dopamine, the serotonin, and the oxytocin, bounded all together, you get excited about the high, yeah? And no longer you start thinking about the consequences or whether this is right or wrong. You just start thinking about, how do I get high again? Do you feel what I'm saying? That's the drug-like state of sex, as I'm explaining. So a lot of us, I've got to ask you this question. Is there a failed exchange here? Have you gone into this thinking, I really wanted this, but I got this, but I'm willing to deal with it because I think I like this guy or I like this girl? You don't have to deal with it. You can change it. Yeah, you can change it. But it starts with you actually saying, getting to the root cause of why you have sex. So, as I said, we're talking about failed exchange. Within the failed exchange, oftentimes people are hoping that somebody reads their mind, as I said. You know, and this is what, with the way of I call it the way of the empath. Oftentimes we want to service other people, but we hope that they will be able to read our mind to meet our expectations. And this is how sometimes people get trapped into the failed exchange. If I give you my body, I'm hoping that you'd give me commitment, which is another point. A lot of times people are looking for commitment in the relationship of sex, or in the interchange or exchange of sex. And what they get back is not what they expected, right? And they find themselves in situationships, in the in the place of, I'm not sure whether we're going to be a couple or not. You know, if you find yourself after sex not sure whether you're in the right place or not, that is why I'm saying this could potentially be a failed exchange, because now you've given over yourself in a vulnerable state or manner, and you don't even realize that it's affected you in such a manner, right? Because you were hoping that once you gave your body over, subconsciously, as you're hoping to give your body over, you get an exchange from it, right? Which is more than just pleasure. Yeah, if we're reducing sex to just being, I just do it because of pleasure, then we need to actually think why you're hardwired and why you think in a certain way, which is just that I think sex is just for pleasure. Because even guys who are just having multiple partners, they can say to themselves, oh, we do it for pleasure. It's not for pleasure. A lot of them are really, look, a lot of us that get into these situations, we're used to taking. Because look, if we actually had a conversation with a woman, yeah, clean slate now, clean slate. Imagine a woman, clean slate, right? Imagine the world is pristine, yeah, and nobody's had sex before. Then you ask a girl, I want to have sex with you. She'll be like, but why? I mean, what's the original purpose of why we want to have sex? Procreation is also to feel vulnerable and to feel loved, right? It's to help you be secure and security. Do you know what I mean? So unless there's an abuse of the first person, right? Because that person then has to get into a mindset of, well, sex is just for pleasure then, right? And it doesn't have to come with any attachments. That's the only way we're going to get people to be out here just giving it up. Because people oftentimes are in a place, like I said, hold on, in a state of brokenness, in a state of vulnerability, in a state of needing something. And what they do is they intertwine that into, if I give my body, I can receive something. And do you know what I mean? And then sometimes we numb ourselves, right? This is what happens. A lot of people numb themselves from the effect of the fact that this sex creates bonds. They numb themselves to it. How do they do that? Because it's a chemical induced, right? Obviously, yes, you may feel it, but you don't have to accept it. Do you understand? You can get yourself to a place where, okay, cool, these chemicals give me the high. I'll take the high, but I do not want to bond with that person, right? I do not want to attach myself to that person. Right? But as you're doing this over and over and over and over again, yeah, the person has to become numb in order to ignore the signals. Do you get me? You have to become numb. And because the chemicals exist here, and not necessarily with pain receptors, then the person can become numb and say, I reject what I'm receiving. And this is where when women get into situations where they're having multiple partners, they do. Men do it a lot when they have troubles at home, they have troubles with ex-partners, if they have troubles with, their parents, whatever the situation they're having, there's some type of pain that comes. They numb the pain and then use sex, obviously, as a way to champion or feed the ego, to feed the cracks that they feel within themselves. And then they numb the signals that come with sex, which is the bonding processes. And so now what happens is actually in the interchange, instead of that man being connected to the woman and getting to know her through that interchange of sex, what happens is he blocks the signals coming through of the oxytocin, if you want to call it that, if you want to call it blocking that literally, but he's blocking those thoughts now that come with the chemical inducement, and then what happens is the other person gets robbed, or vice versa. Because somebody came into that interchange not just because of pleasure. Let me tell you something, there is no interchange that comes in just because of pleasure. None. Because even in the pleasure, there is a hope that something else is coming in. If you get what I'm saying. Like, let me be honest, I'm a bloke, right? Yes, I think sex is amazing. I love sex. And I like it because I get the high out of it, right? But I also understand that when I do this, I start to, if I do this over a process of time, I will start to feel a certain way. And the reason why I don't feel a certain way at the beginning is because, we're going to go into this now, men oftentimes, because of the system, I want you to understand this is not necessarily biological. And we can't even say that 100% because we've always had the system of patriarchy. And you know I love that word now. Because of the system of patriarchy and what it allows me as the ruler to do in this situation, which is to have no accountability, it's hard to say whether this is truly biological that I feel this way. So here it is. I get involved into a situation with sex with an individual, right? And because in the system, I don't get judged the way I feel, right? When I do sex, I can go, I'm okay, I'm cool, I detach myself, right? I can afford to do that. Now, give the woman equal footing. I want you to understand this because you have to understand this. Give the woman equal footing and the ability to do what you can do, which is that when she induces in sex, right, that in the society, they allow women to not be slut-shamed, yeah? They will also turn off the receptors and the inducements that they feel from the chemicals, and they'll do the same to you. Now, here's the problem. When a woman can do the same thing I can do, I'm now shook. Do you know why I'm shook? Because so long as I know how you're going to act, I can act accordingly. Yeah? And if I know that the woman oftentimes will yield to those emotions that she's feeling through the sex, I'm okay. Because I know you'll get attached. And I can always walk away whenever I can walk away. Control. But if there was a situation where women didn't get slut-shamed in the society and they were able to walk away just as able as I am without getting slut-shamed, suddenly it's scary. This is why when men find out women are cheating, they get shook and we start cussing them, right? We start cussing them because we are shook if they do the same thing we do. If they had the same privilege we had, we'd be shook. So necessarily here, is it that men can turn off the way they feel about it during sex? No, we have less accountability and a system that allows us to do so. But if the system allowed the woman to do the exact same thing, we'd be in deep, deep trouble. Now, I can't ignore what the Bible says though. The Bible says that the woman will, and if you read it in Genesis 3 verse 16, it's deep. In Genesis 3 verse 16, it's so deep because the Bible says the woman will pine after her husband. But in other versions, NLT specifically says, the woman will even try to control her husband, but your husband will rule you. And what that let me know is that no matter how much the woman will try to do what these men are doing, it will get to a place where she'll try to control, but actually the man will rule D, just because of the way that our system is set up. Yeah. But again, like I said, before we even got to that point, would there be difference of behavior? Yeah. If the woman was allowed to do what the woman was, if the woman was allowed to do what we were allowed to do, we'll be shook off. I'm telling you, we'll be shook off. Listen, when men meet a woman, yeah, that turn off the receptors, suddenly they feel a certain way. Suddenly they feel used. Suddenly they want the woman. Now they want the woman because now the woman's behaving cold. I know some women like this who are cold. So when they meet a man, the man's like, blood, no, she can't be cold like that. And all that happens is they want to get one over her. Why? Because you don't have control. So really, is it really that men are biologically wired to just have sex for pleasure? No. It's just that you can get away with it, right? So, so moving on to that, there is obviously talk about the fact that men are more body-centered at the beginning of a relationship when it comes to sex, and women are more person-centered when it comes to sex. Body-centered means that you don't really care about the other person's feelings as such, but you care about what you get out of the situation. Person-centered means that I care about your feelings in this situation when it comes to sex. I want you to enjoy it just the way I want to enjoy it, right? And we see that oftentimes that women will give up their bodies to make the man feel happy. But again, there's an expectation of a hope that the man will do something back, and not necessarily sexual, but the man will do something back that will fulfill her wants and her needs. So the question I'm asking again is, do you really want sex, or do you want something else from the situation? And why am I doing this? I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm asking again, do you really want sex, or do you want something from the situation? And so and what happens is, on the course of a relationship, what happens is men become less body focused and more person focused as the relationship gains. And this is why men feel a little bit shaky relationships as time goes on, because then women become more body focused, meaning that they go from being person centered, I want to care about your feelings, so putting you first and putting you forward. And as the process of relationship goes on, as they get comfortable, as they get complacent, they now want to have more body conscious, meaning they now want their desires to be met, right? But if you have a society that quashes women, that restricts women, right, then oftentimes, and especially if they were financially dependent on a man, then those desires have to be pushed down. But if you're in the society that we're in right now, where women can have financial independence and are reliable on us, what happens is you have broken homes, you have cheating, you have women moving just as mad as men, right? And so what happens is now two can play that game and nobody wins. Sometimes people are having sex because you feel like it's the best that you can get. You don't know how to to communicate that you want more from a situation, so you just settle because at least you're getting sex, at least you're getting desired, at least you're getting wanted. Do you understand? So you settle instead. And I want to ask you again: are you settling instead of actually explaining what you truly desire? Do you understand? And obviously, I explained about that women sometimes do things where they give their body over to a man because they want him to feel happy. And so a question I'm asking is that, are you doing this to make him feel happy in the hope that he will fulfill your needs and your wants and your desires? Are you doing this because also you want to feel young, you want to feel vibrant, you want to feel alive? And I'm not just talking about women, I'm talking about men. Because this is why a lot of cheating happens. A lot of cheating happens because men and women want to feel younger, feel vibrant, feel wanted, feel like they're sought after. Because we get complacent, we forget to, like when you first see your girl, blood, you're like, fam, you're looking fire! Where's she dressing? Oh my days, she's looking fire. She can wear the same type of dress, same fire, same body shape, but 10 years later, you're like, hey baby, you ready to go? Oh, you look nice. You look nice to you. A fire shows already that you see that desire, it's waning. And so what happens is sometimes we're looking for somebody to desire us in a certain way because we're not getting it from where we're at. So do you really want sex, or do you really want something else? Do not give your body over in an exchange for a commitment you have not disclosed and you have not rendered already. Your body cannot be used as an exchange for commitment. I want you to understand this. It's very deep, very, very prominent. Your body cannot be used as an exchange for commitment. Okay? They should be committed before they got your body. Okay? Do not give your body over in a hope, in a wimp, in a wish that, you know what, when I do it, they will desire it, they'll want me. Yeah? They'll want me. It's not going to happen. And also, men, don't think that this sex is free. Yeah, the bodies that you're building up is not free. It's catching you. Because actually what it shows us is you're a broken individual, right? And actually what it does, it also starts to make you think that women are not trustworthy. Insecurity starts to build. You go into relationships. Yeah, you're fine at first, but then the mind starts to play tricks. So listen, nobody's free. Really, nobody's free. And so yeah, guys, if you have a different opinion, you have different thoughts, I hope that you were touched by this. But please let us know your kind of thoughts on this video down below. Comment down. Share it with somebody. I always want you to share it with somebody. And they say, look, you ain't got the minerals, baby. You ain't got the minerals. Appreciate you guys. Stay locked, stay loaded. LBB, baby. Think before you do. Don't do before you think.